Our main story tonight is unfinished games. No, not the fifth Baldur's Gate 3 run you restarted before Act 2. I'm talking about a popular trend in the gaming industry to publish games before they're ready. And while ready is subjective, it's pretty funny to spend $70 and get a game like this.
Come back!
What the fuck? Hey, we're good. Shit! Get the fuck.
Now, that last one's really your fault. Did your car pass its smog check? You think you want realism in games until peak performance stares you in the face. Unfinished games are part of our larger subject tonight, enshittification. It is an appropriately named process in which a brand initially offers you a product or service too good to be true, and then once you trust that brand or service, they slowly make the deal shittier for you, better for them, hoping you don't leave. They abuse your trust to make money, a practice coined by most companies' existence, but also the word was coined in 2022 by Cory Doctorow to describe something specifically like TikTok, where it's initially a great experience, not a lot of ads, a decent community, and then ads slowly become more intrusive and the content less genuine as companies take over. But you don't want to leave because of FOMO or something like that. When a company prioritizes itself rather than its customers, we get Airbnb, which is now a shitty hotel. We get Uber, which is now a shitty taxi. We get food delivery apps, which is a shitty way to straight up double the price of your food and still somehow fail to properly pay your not employees. Now, you may think, shitty products suck. Who cares? Just don't use them. But that's actually the problem. Your educated self is an exception to the rule. Most people don't want to or can't spend 20 minutes researching to find MoviePass. They just want free movies. But if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. Many people, though, get tricked by the promise of new technology or an innovative business model that they may not understand, but screw it because I'm getting my food delivered and I don't see any immediate consequences to that. It's kind of like hoping that guy at the Grand Exchange will genuinely double your money. And as I'll explain, your $70 glitchy video game is simultaneously both the best and worst case of this problem, because enshittification is normalized in some but more important industries than video games. And that's the problem. Healthcare, insurance, housing, all industries that have long since shifted from serving to exploiting their users. And now, average people can't do shit about it because of what is a clear type of monopoly, in my opinion. So given that, it's time to talk about enshittification. How companies get away with it, what you can do about it, and what we can do to stop this trend. And let's start with how one decision made in 1914 helps companies get away with so much BS. And it's actually the opposite problem you think. It's called the Ford $5 workday, and it's taught in most every Business 101 class. In 1914, Henry Ford owns an automobile factory. He increases the wages of his workers at that factory to $5 a day, which was a lot back then. This improved job satisfaction, reduced turnover, boosted productivity, and allowed the workers to eventually afford and buy the cars they made. Wow, what a great decision. What does this have to do with enshittification, aka when companies do the opposite and screw over everyone for their own selfish profit? Well, people use this example, or a variation of it, as an argument that companies should be unregulated. No need for a minimum wage, labor laws, or any other restrictions because the $5 workday proves companies will be good when left alone. So clearly, work conditions were best in 1914. The state of labor in America is so wonderful that one business owner was nice one time 100 goddamn years ago, and CEOs still brag about it to this day. Now, yes, the kernel of truth to my bad faith argument is that Business 101 is teaching you how your company should be, not how most companies are. But I often hear this argument anyway, and it's a bit like saying we don't need laws because it's self-destructive to be mean. That doesn't stop people from trying. Innovation, baby. Enshittification. It's a $1 trillion business, and it proves companies, when left alone, will not self-regulate. And that's because of the problem of scale. Companies can burn millions of bridges and still make a shitload of money, with hundreds of millions more bridges left to burn. Take Cyberpunk 2077, a video game that was so broken and glitchy on release that it was removed from the PlayStation Store. Games don't get removed from the PlayStation Store. It was the worst, most awful failure of a game. At least that's what you'd think if you were on social media at the time. The reality was, Cyberpunk's total revenue exceeded $752 million. It was a huge success, comparable to first year sales of the most popular Call of Duty games. There were loud and negative opinions on social media, but so many more people just bought the game. No matter how loud you are, there are more people who aren't. And that fact enables entire industries to largely ignore your complaints. This is one drawback of a connected world. There's almost always another bridge to burn. It used to be that only the biggest companies had the privilege to buy or sell warehouses, or change target markets, or send production to another company as if changing clothes. But now, Joe, down the street, can start a dropshipping business, sell t-shirts he doesn't make, and once he gets bad reviews, he can rename the company, start the same shit in a new city, and do it all from the comfort of his living room. Our connected world is a great example that we as humans cannot comprehend big numbers. Nobody has time to research everything. You're likely also uneducated about many things, but hopefully you do keep up with really important subjects. And that brings us to how video games are simultaneously the best and worst example of the problem of scale. You are being used as a free beta tester. Yes, FIFA, Call of Duty, and many other popular franchises just released the 98th rinse and repeat iteration of nearly the same game. And yes, it's frustrating to feel left out of the gaming community when no one buys into the new viral Fortnite season. And so, it's a relief, but also horrible, that video games are a luxury product. Why is that? Well, it's good because we can opt out. Bad because these strategies work even when we can opt out. That's the power of branding and advertising to such a massive audience. Like, at least with healthcare or in insurance in America, we often don't have a lot of choice. That's clearly a bad thing, but at least it makes the problem clear. It's something we should address. My argument is that the same root problem exists in all these industries, and yet we address them separately. We treat the symptoms, not the cause. The stakes aren't nearly so high with video games, so I get why it's not addressed. But if we do address the root of the problem, we could fix all these industries at once. Because right now, companies in almost every industry are learning to spend our trust and good faith like it's a roll of quarters and they just found a new pinball machine. So what can we do? The best thing to address enshittification would be more comprehensive antitrust laws and a better execution of those laws. We need more tools to stop corporate excuses like, it's new technology, or I have a lot of lawyers. I would love it if we could punish companies who abuse the legal system, delay payouts, or appeal 300 times in a row, but, baby steps. Bottom line is, we need to force companies to treat laws like laws, not speed bumps. We need to give judges the ability to issue company-ruining, percentage-based fines, not a slap on the wrist. And I get it. That's bad for companies. The purpose of laws is to prevent unchecked predatory power. Companies aren't, or shouldn't be, an exception to that. And look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm some guy, and I don't know how this could work or how it would be implemented. There may be massive, unseen ramifications to what I suggest. There likely will be. I'm throwing ideas out there because something needs to change. It seems obvious we need better execution of our laws. We should stop tech companies who routinely get away with predatory pricing where they undercut an existing market to gain market dominance. We can define the word marketplace more comprehensively so tech companies can't build their own marketplace and then monopolize it. For example, video game companies could be forced to allow third game parties into their in-game store where those third parties can design their own cosmetics, because a store where the only seller is the company, that's a monopolized marketplace. I could go on, and I will. We could mandate reasonable return policies if you don't get a working product. We can require out-the-door pricing for goods and services, delve into non-exploitative terms of service, and this is just a start of what the problems are. And if it seems like this would break the back of a company's profit margins, maybe that's because we've normalized giving companies too much power. Companies have never needed this stuff in the past. They always say that any regulations will destroy them, and it's almost never true. There is also good news. Many companies are a force for good. This would just stop those that take advantage of our trust. And thankfully, legislation isn't the only way we can act. We can build a culture to recognize that actions speak louder than PR statements. That when it looks like a price gouging duck, walks like a price gouging duck, and quacks like a price gouging duck, stop telling me to ignore the duck's second fucking vacation home. What this means is stop acting surprised. It's not. Oh my god, the company misled me. Yeah. Are you shocked? We have been so slow to adapt to this interconnected world of ours. And the main thing we should have learned by now is that those with power can afford to earn our trust. And this is all very possible. We've broken monopolies in the past. We broke up Standard Oil in 1911. A settlement split up the telephone company in 1982. And in 2000, Microsoft was found to enjoy monopoly power. I bet they did. Now, that last one was overturned because of procedural issues, but the fact remains that not only do antitrust laws currently kinda sometimes work, like the Sherman Act from 1890, they can still be used to address many of today's problems. We just need to update or at least execute them in a more robust, proactive, and comprehensive way. In fact, the Reagan administration, what a surprise, it's largely what scaled back antitrust legislation's execution, but Biden has stepped up antitrust enforcement again. And if that isn't enough, what can you do as an individual? The most obvious is you should embrace multiple marketplaces and compete them against each other. What does that mean? It means, for your all-important video games, build a community that happens to play a game, not a community built around one game. I see wonderful efforts to lower the barrier to entry for video game development in communities like Thor's, which means there are far more communities or opportunities for indie games like Among Us to pop off. There's fewer incentives for small developers to enshittify your products because they don't have pressure from the fact that they are a publicly owned company and they have mandated perpetual forever growth into the sky, or else everyone will be mad. I will also state the most obvious. Look at reviews before you buy a game, and buy it on a platform with a decent return policy like Steam. If it comes to anything that's not in video games, do your best to follow these rules too, because when it comes to enshittified products that aren't games, the best you can do is reduce your reliance on them. Don't marry yourself to TikTok or Amazon Prime or Uber or Airbnb. Taxis now have apps and can work much like Uber. Hotels have always been an option, but most importantly, understand that convenience isn't free. If something's easier, that doesn't make it better. Now, the best counter-argument is that we shouldn't bother with any of this, because monopoly busting, there's more important things, and to be honest, you're right. Video game monopolistic practices aren't the most important issue right now. But my point is, we should set clear definitions for what monopolies are. And if they're inclusive enough, those definitions, to include video games, it should make all these other important sectors like housing easier to deal with. And I'll repeat, I'm not a lawyer. I'd actually love to know your suggestions in the comments. This is meant to start a conversation. I'm not nearly smart enough to solve it. It's entirely possible that the issue is one of enforcement or funding, and the Sherman Act maybe is fine. Maybe it's a problem of collective action. I don't know. It's a complicated issue, even after having researched it. But if you learned anything about enshittification today, I hope we can agree on one thing, and it's that shopping on TikTok fucking sucks.